You became exhausted long before your body gave out. You are standing at the edge of your own life, feeling like every step forward is just another violent collision with a brick wall. Society has trained you to look at this exhaustion, this sequence of defeats, and believe that you are fundamentally broken. They told you that the resistance you feel is a sign to turn back, to surrender, to accept a smaller existence, but that is the greatest deception of the modern world. Your quiet desperation is not a symptom of failure. It is the precise coordinate of your upcoming breakthrough. You have been running from the very fire that was designed to forge you. Tonight, we strip away the lie. We will dissect the anatomy of ruin and show you exactly why your darkest collapse is the only valid entry ticket to the life you secretly demand. The sabotage began when you were too young to defend yourself. You were placed in a system that punished the incorrect answer and rewarded the safe, obedient silence. They programmed you with a deep, paralyzing phobia of the incorrect move, equating a temporary misstep with permanent unworthiness. This wasn't education, it was compliance training. They built a cage of anxiety in your mind, ensuring you would never step out of line. Look at the adults walking around you today. They are terrified of taking a risk, anchored to lives they secretly despise because the fear of falling outweighs the desire to climb. They do not raise their hands, they do not launch the project. They swallow their ambition because their identity is too fragile to survive a public mistake. The emotional cost of this conditioning is a slow, suffocating regret that poisons them from the inside out. It is time to rewrite the code. A failure is only a failure if you walk away empty-handed. You must aggressively relabel these moments in your psyche. A failed attempt is not a judgment on your soul. It is simply raw data. It is brutal, unfiltered feedback about the mechanics of reality. You are not a victim of circumstance. You are a scientist in the laboratory of your own life, gathering the intelligence required to win. There is a dangerous disease spreading through the modern mind, and its main symptom is an obsession with comfort. You have been sold the illusion that a frictionless life is a successful life, but nature does not reward the stagnant. When you actively avoid struggle, you are not protecting yourself. You are putting your potential into an induced coma. You are trading your raw power for a fleeting sense of security. This paralysis creeps in silently. You start choosing the easiest route home. You avoid the difficult conversation. You delay the hard work for tomorrow. Soon, the walls of your comfort zone shrink so tightly around you that even the smallest inconvenience feels like a massive tragedy. Your tolerance for stress atrophies, leaving you weak, fragile, and utterly unprepared for the inevitable storms of existence. Wake up and step into the cold. You must actively hunt for the uncomfortable. True self-respect is born in the crucible of voluntary hardship. When you choose the path of resistance, you send a commanding signal to your nervous system. You are the dictator of your reality, not a passenger. Break the paralysis by doing one thing every single day that makes you want to quit. That is where you reclaim your power. Perfectionism is not a standard of excellence. It is a sophisticated defense mechanism for cowards. You delay your launch, you rewrite the email 100 times, and you hide your work because you're terrified of being perceived as flawed. You use the pursuit of the perfect moment as an elegant excuse to never enter the arena. But the perfect moment is a ghost. It does not exist. While you're busy polishing your unreleased work in the shadows, someone with half your talent is aggressively taking your share of the world. They are shipping messy products, having clumsy conversations, and failing publicly. And because they are failing, they are adapting. Your perfectionism is starving you. It leaves you with an immaculate reputation in a world that doesn't even know you exist. Kill the idol of perfection. Trade it for the brutal momentum of iteration. Your first attempt will be garbage, and you must make peace with that immediately. Give yourself permission to be terrible, because being terrible is the mandatory bridge to becoming undeniable. Ship the work. Let the market strike it down. Take the criticism on the chin, adapt and strike back harder. That is the only valid strategy. There is a heavy, invisible anchor tied to your chest, pulling you down in the quiet moments of the night. It is the crushing weight of everything you know you could be, but refuse to become. It is the ghost of your unlived potential. Every time you negotiate with your weakness, every time you choose safety over purpose, that weight increases. It is a debt you're accumulating with your future self. This debt manifests as a low-grade bitterness that stains your interactions. You become cynical. You start criticizing those who are actually trying, masking your own cowardice with intellectual arrogance. You watch others cross the finish line and whisper excuses about their luck, knowing deep down it was your own hesitation that kept you in the stands. This is the silent tragedy of a life half-lived. You must stop the bleeding today. Forgive yourself for the time you have wasted, but do not tolerate another second of retreat. The only way to dissolve the weight of unlived potential is through massive, unapologetic action. You are entirely responsible for the gap between where you are and where you are supposed to be. Close the gap. Let the heavy lifting of your ambition replace the dead weight of your regret. You pride yourself on your current winning streak. You look at your life, notice the absence of recent failures, and pat yourself on the back for your competence. You think a flawless record is the ultimate proof of mastery? But you're misreading the dashboard. If you have not been brutally defeated lately, it is not because you're perfect, it is because you have stopped testing the limits of your capability. A long period without failure is not a medal of honor. It is a blaring red alarm of stagnation. It means your goals have shrunk to fit your current comfort level. It means you're playing a game so small that you can win it with your eyes closed. The tragedy here is that while you feel safe in your tiny kingdom, the rest of the world is evolving, leaving you behind in a state of comfortable obsolescence. You need to break your own winning streak. Deliberately enter a domain where you are the absolute beginner. Set a target so unreasonably high that failing is not just a possibility, but a statistical probability. If you're not falling off the wall occasionally, you're not climbing high enough. Seek the resistance, invite the friction, and let the sheer scale of your new failures become the compass for your true growth. The most valuable intelligence in this world is never handed out for free. You believe that reading another book or watching another lecture will grant you the mastery you seek. But theory is cheap. Every mistake you make is the mandatory payment for a lesson that cannot be taught in a classroom. It is the tuition fee you pay to the University of Brutal Reality. The pain you feel when a project collapses or a deal falls through is simply the transaction clearing. You can study the mechanics of a business or a relationship for a decade, but the genuine education only arrives when your first attempt shatters into pieces. People who refuse to fail are simply refusing to pay the tuition. They remain forever ignorant, hoarding their pride while bankrupting their future. Stop demanding a free ride. Acknowledge the transaction. When everything falls apart, you must look at the wreckage and realize you just purchased exclusive intelligence. You just paid for the lesson, so extract every ounce of value from it. You are now sharper, colder, and vastly more equipped than the person you were yesterday. The tuition is expensive, but ignorance will cost you your entire life. When you collide with a massive obstacle, your initial instinct is to interpret it as a cosmic stop sign. You look at the sheer size of the barrier and convince yourself that the universe is telling you to turn back. You rationalize your surrender by calling it being realistic, but your perception is deeply flawed. The barrier is not a rejection, it is a filter. The wall is not placed there to permanently stop you. It is placed there to stop everybody else. It is a brutal mechanism designed to separate those who merely prefer an outcome from those who are willing to bleed for it. When you hit that wall and turn around, you are doing exactly what the barrier was designed to make you do. You are joining the forgotten majority who quit at the first sign of real friction. Shift your visual field. When the obstacle appears, do not see a dead end. See a test of your resolve. That wall is guarding the exact reality you are demanding. It is asking you to prove the depth of your hunger. You do not need permission to break through it. You need a hammer. The only valid response to a wall is to climb it, break it, or tear it down completely. You operate under the delusion that success must be immediate to be valid. You launch an initiative, make a single attempt, and when it inevitably misfires, you declare the entire mission a disaster. This is the arrogance of the amateur. You expect to master the mechanics of reality on your first pass, ignoring the blood and repetition required to build anything of lasting substance. This fragile expectation is what keeps you perpetually starting over. You abandon the project right at the moment. It requires real endurance. You jump from one shiny endeavor to the next, addicted to the friction-free phase of the beginning, but you never stay long enough to survive the necessary ugly phase. As a result, your life becomes a graveyard of half-finished monuments to your impatience. You thought the first try was the destination, but the truth is, the first try is only the reconnaissance mission. It is meant to fail. It is meant to reveal the hidden traps of the battlefield. Your job is not to win on day one. Your job is to survive the failure, map the territory, and reload. Mastery belongs exclusively to the men who treat their initial disasters as nothing more than target practice. There is a silent rot happening inside your mind right now, and it is caused by an overdose of safety. You have engineered a life so predictable, so thoroughly insulated from risk, that your internal resilience is withering away. When you strip all danger from your existence, you do not achieve peace. You achieve a profound and dangerous fragility. You become a glass structure waiting for a stone. Look closely at the emotional chaos triggered by minor inconveniences in your day. A delayed response or a slight shift in plans sends your nervous system into panic. This is the cost of never testing your own structural integrity. Because you never face absolute ruin, your mind fabricates emergencies out of thin air. You are rusting from the inside out, decaying in a velvet-lined prison of your own making. The antidote to this decay is controlled exposure to chaos. You must voluntarily walk into environments where your incompetence is exposed. You need the shock of failure to remind your nervous system that you are still alive. Strip away the armor and let the world strike you. The cuts and bruises are not injuries. They are the friction required to sharpen the dull blade of your spirit. The most dangerous thing about a severe loss is not the loss itself. It is the story you attach to it. When the collapse happens, you do not just say that you failed at a specific task. Your ego, desperate for absolute certainty, mutates the event into an identity. You look in the mirror and declare that you are a failure. You internalize a temporary event as a permanent flaw in your character. Once you adopt the identity of the defeated, your actions naturally align to prove it true. You stop putting in the effort because in your mind, the outcome is already predetermined. You carry the posture of a beaten dog, subtly signaling to the world that you are no longer a threat. This mental shift turns a single, isolated defeat into a self-fulfilling prophecy of lifelong mediocrity. You must separate your self-worth from your current trajectory. You are not your recent bankruptcy. You are not your latest rejection. You are the consciousness observing these events. Detach your ego from the outcome. Wear your failures like a loose garment, entirely distinct from the man underneath. When you kill the identity of the loser, failure loses its venom and simply becomes data on a screen. It sounds like complete madness, but you must learn to engineer a sense of satisfaction when everything falls apart. The natural instinct is to mourn the collapse, to let the pain of the setback consume your focus and destroy your momentum. But this is the predictable reaction of the weak. You are not celebrating the pain itself. You are recognizing the profound signal hidden within the chaos. When you let the failure dictate your emotional state, you give away your leverage. You sit in the ruins of your plans and let the disappointment erode your will to act. While the masses are complaining about the unfairness of the game, they are voluntarily removing themselves from the board. The emotional cost is a slow drain of your vital energy, leaving you paralyzed by a temporary manageable setback. You must engineer a cognitive override. Every obstacle and every defeat is absolute confirmation that you are actually in the arena, pushing against the boundaries of your current capacity. When the structure breaks, your immediate thought must be a cold, calculated realization that you are on the right path. Use the failure as proof of your forward movement, not a final verdict on your worth. You suffer deeply because your core identity is chained to the immediate result of your actions. You mistakenly believe that if the project fails or the relationship collapses, you are inherently flawed. This emotional enmeshment is a profound tactical error. You are confusing the execution of a temporary strategy with the fundamental value of your own existence. This attachment turns every minor decision into a life or death scenario. The anxiety of potentially losing paralyzes your ability to think clearly. You become rigid, defensive, and completely unable to pivot when the market or the environment shifts. Your desperation for a specific outcome makes you blind to the actual mechanics of the situation, ensuring your inevitable defeat. The master operates with cold detachment. You put in the violent, undeniable work, but you mentally sever the cord to the final result. If it works, you adjust and advance. If it burns to the ground, you collect the data and rebuild. Your power lies in the unbreakable discipline of the action itself, completely independent of the fluctuating chaos of external rewards. You view disaster as an unacceptable anomaly. You have been heavily conditioned to expect a smooth, uninterrupted ascent toward your ultimate goals. When absolute chaos strikes, you treat it as an unfair interruption to your perfectly planned timeline. This is a fragile and dangerous delusion. Extreme friction is not the exception to the rule. Friction is the fundamental law of the universe. Operating with this flawed map means you're constantly outraged by reality. You spend your energy complaining about the storm instead of learning how to navigate the ship. This chronic frustration breeds a victim mentality. You start believing the world is actively conspiring against you, when in truth you simply refuse to accept the basic physics of human achievement. You must redefine the anomaly. Peace and frictionless progress are the true anomalies. Hardship, resistance, and failure are the standard operating conditions. When you expect the collapse, it loses its power to shock you. You stop asking why the road is difficult and start sharpening your weapons for the inevitable battles ahead. This is the posture of quiet, unshakable readiness. Think of the brutal mechanics of a heavy, elastic band. To launch it forward with devastating force, you must first pull it backward to its absolute maximum limit. Your existence operates on the exact same physical principle. The moment immediately preceding a massive leap in your personal evolution is always characterized by crushing pressure, severe doubt, and a feeling of impending ruin. The tragedy is that most men break right at the threshold, when the tension reaches its peak, when the pain feels unbearable and the desired reality seems furthest away, they release the grip. They mistake the necessary accumulation of kinetic energy for an incoming destruction. They quit the exact moment the universe is testing their structural integrity for the final launch. You thought the pressure was meant to break you, but the truth is, it is meant to propel you. When you feel entirely stretched out, completely exhausted, and on the verge of snapping, hold your ground. That intense friction is simply the stored energy required for your next massive advance. Do not surrender when the tension peaks. Anchor yourself and ride the release. You fundamentally understand that you cannot build physical mass without aggressively tearing the muscle fibers under heavy resistance. The body requires the trauma of the heavy weight to signal the necessity of growth, yet you expect your mind to become an unbreakable fortress while resting in a soft, unchallenged environment. Your psychology demands the exact same stress stimulus as your physical form. Shielding your mind from the heavy lifting of failure guarantees emotional frailty. When you run from rejection and hide from the possibility of looking foolish, your resilience atrophies. You become a man who crumbles at the slightest critique, incapable of sustaining the focus required for long-term empire building. Your soft life is manufacturing a dangerously weak mind. Treat every humiliating defeat and every public failure as a mandatory repetition in the forge of your own character. Every time you face a definitive no and force yourself to keep walking, your internal architecture hardens. The resistance is not a punishment, it is the exact tool required to hammer your weak, hesitant tendencies into cold, disciplined steel. The ultimate rewards in this life are never handed to the most talented individuals in the room. They are exclusively reserved for the most fiercely persistent. The elite few do not turn around when the environment shifts against them. They do not accept the obstacle as a final verdict. When they encounter a massive, impenetrable barrier, they do not walk away, they begin looking for a hammer. The consequence of retreating is a lifetime of almost. You become a master of justification, explaining to everyone why the timing wasn't right, or the odds were unfair, but every time you back down from the wall, you lose a piece of your internal authority. You teach yourself that your will is subordinate to the environment. This habit of surrender slowly bleeds the ambition out of your spirit. You must adopt the psychology of the wall breaker. You will leap, strike, and dismantle every artificial limit placed in front of you. Understand that the resistance is the training protocol. Every single barrier you shatter does not just move you forward, it fundamentally alters your architecture, making you vastly stronger for the inevitable wall that waits ahead. You have been convinced that progress only counts if it is visible. You seek the spotlight, the validation, and the applause before the foundation is even poured. But the most dangerous and permanent transformations do not happen on a stage. They happen in absolute obscurity. The darkest periods of your timeline are not punishments. They are the necessary cover required to rebuild your engine without interference. Cost of needing constant visibility is fatal. If you only put in the work when people are watching, you are entirely enslaved to the crowd. Your discipline becomes a performance rather than a core protocol. When the applause stops, and it always stops, your motivation collapses. You build a fragile persona that looks impressive in the light, but crumbles the moment you are left alone in the quiet. Embrace the anonymity of the shadows. Silence the noise, disconnect from the need to be seen, and construct your empire where nobody is watching. When you remove the audience, you remove the ego. You are left with nothing but the raw, unglamorous mechanics of daily execution. Build in the dark, so that when you finally step into the light, your foundation is absolutely unbreakable. Stubbornness is frequently and dangerously disguised as discipline. You keep hitting the exact same locked door with the exact same broken key, expecting reality to suddenly bend to your will. True discipline is holding your ultimate vision with a relentless grip, but remaining entirely ruthless with your methods. If a tactic consistently fails, holding onto it is not loyalty. It is intellectual laziness. Your ego refuses to adapt. It would rather fail doing what feels familiar than succeed by admitting a flaw in the original master plan. You become romantically attached to a failing strategy simply because you invented it. This rigid mindset guarantees your obsolescence in a world that never stops moving. You crash the ship because you're too proud to alter the coordinates. The master operates like water flowing around the immovable stone. You must divorce your ego from your methods. When the path collapses, you do not sit in the rubble and mourn it. You analyze the structural failure, pivot instantly, and forge an alternate route. Your power lies in your terrifying capacity to adapt, outmaneuver, and reinvent your approach while your competition remains stuck in the past. In your absolute lowest moments, when the collapse feels total and the exhaustion is suffocating, your vision narrows entirely to the pain. You lose sight of the geography of your own success. The sheer agony of the struggle tricks your mind into believing that the suffering is the final destination. You forget that the deepest darkness is only the shadow projected by the approaching light. because you cannot see past the immediate friction. You stop right when the barrier is at its thinnest. You let the temporary frustration overwrite years of preparation. The tragedy of human potential is not a lack of capability. It is the habit of quitting 5 minutes before the miracle. You walk away from the excavation site mere inches from the gold, leaving the reward for the man who simply stayed one day longer. Force a deliberate cognitive shift in the middle of the storm. When you feel you cannot take another step, visualize that directly behind this towering wall of agony is the exact door you have been hunting for. Success is not found on a smooth, flowery path. It is waiting silently on the other side of your most brutal trial. Hold the line. The breakthrough is imminent. There is a final, silent evolution of the mind. It happens the moment you stop fighting the existence of failure and begin to actively weaponize it. You transition from the victim of circumstance to the master of the arena. You no longer hope for an easy life. You cultivate the dangerous competence required to handle a difficult one. The fear of falling simply evaporates from your operating system. Look at the masses living safely in the stands. They spend their days pointing fingers, criticizing the dirt and blood of those actually fighting on the ground. They mistake their clean hands for superiority, completely unaware that their safety is just the evidence of their cowardice. They will arrive at the end of their lives with flawless records and completely empty souls. Step fully onto the sand. Accept that the cuts, the setbacks, and the public defeats are permanent fixtures of a life well lived. When you strip the world of its ability to frighten you with failure, you remove all of its leverage over you. You become an untouchable force. Let them watch from the safety of the bleachers while you carve your legacy into the dirt. The struggle for the reality you demand does not end in defeat. It only ends in cold, undeniable lessons. True power is not the absence of obstacles. It is the ruthless capability to dismantle them. You have spent years running from the friction designed to elevate you. The distance between your current frustration and your ultimate vision is paved entirely with the rubble of your failed attempts. Every piece of that rubble is proof that you're moving forward. Make your targets so massive that failure becomes a terrifying yet necessary reality, because only the men willing to risk absolute ruin will ever taste absolute victory. The ticket to this life costs everything. Pay it willingly. As you integrate this new operating system and master the art of losing, the next vulnerability you must secure is your own attention. The modern world is a machine designed to steal your focus. We will dismantle that trap next.